Hi, Marci. Thank you so much for joining me. This launch party is so much fun, and I'm really glad that you're a part of it. Marci James is the industry marketing director. Do I have that right? Marketing director of Realtor.com. And we've had several conversations about disasters and crisis over the last couple of years. So I wanted to invite her on because she actually experienced a disaster herself. So, Marci, you were living in Florida, right? Can you tell us a little bit about what happened?
I can, but first I want to say thank you for having me and congratulations on the launch of your book.
Thank you.
But yeah, I'm back in Colorado right now, but we lived in Florida for almost 9 years. And during that time, it was a very active time for hurricanes in South Florida. And we had many times where we had to put the shutters up and the kids would stay home from school, hurricane days and no snow days there, but hurricane days for sure. And there were so many false alarms. We had so many times where you go through the whole scenario, you put the shutters up, you stock up on water, you do what you think you need to do to be prepared. But we finally had the real deal that came through. And again, it was one of those we weren't expecting it to be as bad as it was because the storm came in from the Gulf and came across the state. But because it was so warm and it came across the Everglades, it actually normally when a hurricane hits land, they lose strength really quickly. And they thought the forecast had it losing strength, but it came through the Everglades and actually grew to a Cat 3 when it hit us. And it was quite, we went, like where my house was right in the center. So that we had the eye wall experience, which was fascinating in and of itself. But it was quite the experience. And we were not prepared. I will tell you that we thought we were prepared, but we were not prepared.
So what does having several false alarms, how does that affect your mental state? Because I would think that you'd be like, oh, well, this is just another false alarm, or um, it probably is hard to say, okay, I have to go through this routine again.
It is. And there's so much work because it's not just like putting these shutters up, which is hugely, two-story home. You have to go carry these huge shutters up. They get drilled in. It's a huge amount of work. You have to and in Florida, everybody has outdoor furniture and patio furniture, all of that. Anything that can be fly away has to be brought in and put into the garage. So you have to take your cars out of the garage. So you can bring all of the outdoor furniture and planters and anything that could blow away in, and it's just a huge amount of work to prep, but you do it, and this is one of those times where it's coming in from the Gulf, and we knew we were in the path. We're like, oh, it's going to die over the Everglades, we'll be fine. And it turned out to be a really bad storm. And we had everything in the garage, but you don't think about the fact that you hear, we had the huge barrel tile on our roof, and you can hear them sliding off, and you can hear, you're like, oh gosh, I hope that's not hitting my car. Which is sitting in the driveway. It was interesting when we went over the eye wall, there was this, went through, when we got inside the eye wall, there's that huge period of calm, and everybody, you cannot see outside because there's just shutters, and the shutters are like, and our glass patio doors, I remember, were bowing from the force of the pressure and the wind. I mean, we had huge, like 7-foot tall patio doors across our whole backside of our house, and they would bow, and you can hear just stuff slamming into your house. And so this calm comes over, and you race outside, and like all of our palm trees were snapped in half, and huge amounts of water in the street. The guys are out there with shovels and rakes trying to clear the what do you call it, the storm drains, because they were clogged with debris. And at one point I remember thinking too, like, why do I need all this water for extra water? We're supposed to fill up our tubs, which we did, but I was like, I've got a pool full of water out here, which was such a crazy thought, because like our pool was a mud pit. It's not like anything you would want to put your, bathe in or jump in. No, or it was not like, because I can think, oh, we can just bathe in the pool. The pool was a mud pit. But I would say the ways that even our community was not prepared was that power was completely out and every street light was down. So there was no, even when people could get streets cleared and could get out in their cars, it was traffic mania because there was no lights anywhere. But and they brought in a ton of gas. I know FEMA, like, oh yeah, we have plenty of gas. They're bringing in all these truckloads so everybody can fuel up. But the bigger issue was the gas stations didn't have power and a lot of them didn't have generators. So there was no way to pump your gas. So the few stations that were open still had massive lines, even though we had no shortage of gas. We just didn't have a way to get it in. Some of the other things we discovered, which I know you probably have in your book, but we didn't realize, get cash, because when the power's out, all of the scanners and all this other electric stuff isn't running. So what they were doing were they were letting people into the grocery stores, like, I can't remember, like 15 or 20 at a time, but there was a very manual checkout process. And all of the like frozen goods were taped off. You couldn't get, but everything else that was on the shelf you could purchase. But you had to pay cash because there was no scanning of anything, no power to do that. Generator, of course, was incredibly important. And I just remember sharing with the neighbors, like you'd have power cords, like we'd take turns. Okay, you stick your refrigerator on for the next 3 hours and then you come off and we'll put ours on. And yeah.
I think, okay, so 2 or 3 things that you just mentioned that are in the book. The number one thing you need to have is cash. And I always get asked, how much cash do I need to have? And I use the rule of thumb of, okay, depending on where you live, the cost of a hotel room, because you may have to go and pay cash for a hotel room. So having enough cash for 5 days or whatever it is a very good rule of thumb. But yeah, I mean, you have to pay cash for your gas, you have to pay cash for your groceries. And that is something that, most emergency, when you see information, even from FEMA, they don't really talk about having cash.
Yeah.
So cash is critically important. And the gas station. So I always tell people, if the thing about a hurricane, so it's coming, you've got warnings, and to go out and fill up your tanks before the disaster rather than waiting, because yeah, okay, they'll truck in the gas, but just like you said, if they don't have electricity, they can't pump it.
No.
So those are really 2 very important points. How were your kids during this time? How old were they, and what was the experience?
They were, my older 2, gosh, I think I when in high school, one in middle school, and then one that was in elementary at the time. And when the storm got really bad, they were all frightened. It was so noisy. We wouldn't let them. We made them all come down. Their bedrooms were upstairs, and for a long time they were hanging out. The 2 older ones, the little one was down with us. They were hanging out upstairs, but my little one actually like curled up under our coffee table and went to sleep. He was really scared. It was the sound was very scary. It's very loud the entire time, and yeah, they were scared, and I really wasn't prepared again on how to deal with their fear. And how to calm them down, because honestly, I was pretty frightened myself we weren't expecting it.
So did you have an emergency kit?
We did. We had plenty of water and we had an emergency kit, but it's still, you can't get on the internet. There's no internet anywhere. You can make phone calls as long as and text messages, as long as you're charged up, your phone is going and that. And so we were able to reach family and let everybody know we were okay that way. But it's so hard. I think social media has gotten better and you can do a lot from your phone now, but back then it's still hard if you don't have internet. If you're using data only, it's still hard to do a lot on social media to let people know that you're okay. And
one of the things that I talk about in the book, by the way, and you think what happens, be prepared, be ready. One of the things I talk about is you need to have, and by the way, a lot of times cell towers go down, so you don't have cell service. Yeah. This actually happened to a woman in Houston here, I think it was last year. Her cell tower went down. That's all she had was her cell phone, and her kids were at school, and she went almost 24 hours without reaching her kids. I can't either. I absolutely cannot imagine the terror that that might be. So I talk about the fact you need to have some way of communicating that is not a cell phone,
Mhm.
like either a solar phone or something, anything that it does not require a cell tower, because cell towers go down all the time. And when they go down and all you have is your cell phone, you can't communicate, period.
Well, thankfully, we still had cell usage, but I was back then, I was working for OBO, as some of you may remember. And like I was running my own territory, my own business. And we had, I had no way to get any work done. I had no way to really contact or do any scheduling or get a hold of all. Like it was like I didn't have the business part as planned out either as I should have. So that was an interesting experience as well, trying to reach, clients that we had photography scheduled for, photographers, to see who was okay, who could drive, who could still get out. Because there were parts of the area of South Florida that were not affected very much by this hurricane. And depending on where a photographer was, or if they were able to, we could still do a little bit of business, but I wasn't aware. I mean, I couldn't get the internet to figure it all out.
Okay, so let's talk about mindset just a little bit, because
Mhm.
when you look at an emergency kit, people talk about, okay, I've got food, I've got water, I'm good. No, you're not good. You want to take a look at the risk factors that you have, like hurricanes or flooding in Florida, or tornadoes now. You just had one a couple weeks ago.
Mhm.
You take a look at those risk factors and you figure out, okay, if I cannot go anywhere for a week,
Mhm.
what do I need to have in there? Well, you should have some kind, make sure you've got medicine, make sure
Mhm.
that you have, if the power goes out, do you have, what do you have for clothing? What do you have if you have to go to a shelter? What do you
Mhm.
need to have in that bag?
Mhm.
And the list is in the book. It also is in the download that you get when you buy the book. So you can go through that list, and when you have that bag, and you would need an emergency bag, what would have happened if your area would have been flooded and you weren't required to evacuate? If you're required to evacuate, please just do it. Don't question it, just
Oh,
do it.
yeah.
But there's so many people that say, oh, it's not going to happen to me, or there's been all these false alarms, or there's been this, or there's been that, or I can take care of my house. Mother
Yeah,
Nature
so
is,
many people think that. And
yeah.
and that's part of the issue with like Florida and hurricanes is too, you have these, it's very cyclical. And so you have these times where there really aren't a lot of hurricanes and warnings. And then you have this period where they start coming in, but they warn so many people, oh, you're in the cone, but it's not, there were so many times we put those shutters up, whole neighborhood did. And we really had minor, effects from it. And so, yeah, it's really easy to take that attitude of like, it's not gonna, we'll be fine. We'll be fine.
Right.
But, and I mean, luckily we didn't lose, we lost tiles off the roof, but we did not lose like parts of any, I mean, our house was intact and fine. But there were many people that lost parts of a roof. And I think even just like having a tarp, I think you and I talked about that one time. It's like, I never really thought about that, but having a huge tarp to throw over your house. So when the storm's over, so that you can try to salvage what's inside.
And then if you have pets, what are you going to do with the pets?
That was the next thing I was going to bring up too. And, the thing that really made me, I mean, we were fine. We didn't have pet supplies packed, but had it been worse, we had two pups, two dogs, and we had to leave the house and go, to a hotel. We would have needed those. Yeah, we weren't as prepared as we should have been for sure. And I look back, where I live in Denver is very near where the Marshall Fire was. I'm like, what, a month ago almost. And those people, a lot of them got up and went to work. It's a normal day, not knowing that this massive grass fire was going to take out whole neighborhoods, or basically a whole city of Superior. It happened so fast. Like the people that were actually able to get their pets out are very lucky. So many people were not able to. And it's heartbreaking. No matter where you live, anything unexpected can happen. There can be a
Right.
natural disaster of any kind. And just to have that, a kit ready with the basic supplies. And then I think, you have to yearly, like put something on your calendar, yearly go in and update it because things, batteries can get old, food can get old, you need to
Or you'll
totally,
borrow something out of the kit, oh, I need those, I need that
you need
tape.
those batteries.
You're
Yeah.
right. And batteries. Yeah. Well, that's one of the reasons. So I created this book so that people that work with consumers and small businesses, or people that work with consumers and small businesses,
Mhm.
that they can white label this. And the reason for that is this is not a book that's going to go on a bookshelf. This is a book that talks about the plans. It talks about what you need to have in the kit, what you need to do. It talks specifically about disasters and what you need to have for that particular type of disaster, both not just natural disasters, but man-made as well. And
Mhm.
so every year, this should be with your emergency kit. So you pull it out and say, okay, let me go back and refresh my memory. And you're doing the drills. This is a good thing to, if you've got children, it's a good thing to say, okay, we're going to look at this chapter because this might affect us. What is your best piece of advice when it comes to being prepared?
Yeah, it's really hard. You have to assume that the worst could happen. And it's hard to do because I'm a very positive thinker. My glass is always half full. And so it's hard to I'm like, oh, we'll be fine, but it's like you really being prepared would have been better. We would have been a little bit more comfortable.